So here we go. So yes, let's get started. So last time, we had a good look at yes. Uh, okay. Last time we have basically started understanding the knowledge area, right? So first knowledge area is business analysis, planning, and monitoring. Could you hear me loud and clear? No
Yes,
challenge
sir.
there. Anybody have any questions as of now?
No, sir.
Yeah, good, right? Okay. So last time we had look at the first of the six knowledge area, business analysis, planning, and monitoring. So first, as a good business analysis, the best practices get your house aligned in terms of how business analysis to be done, what type of monitoring techniques I'm going to implement there, and so on and so forth, right? So we had basically discussed on these things in terms of input, processing, and output, or input, tasks, and output kind of way. So here we try to understand the needs and the performance objective in terms of non-functional requirement. So here, on a overall, we start basically jotting down the requirement or extracting down the requirement from the minutes of meeting. So here, every minutes of meeting, whatever you share with the people who have attended the meeting, and whatever being applied by policies and procedure, you normally deduced the number of requirements from that, and then start building a list of requirement as per the core objective of the given business analysis project. Then you have some tasks to be performed, like you need to plan business analysis approach in terms of how you're going to do it further. Is it every time an individual interview or a group interview or a brainstorming session or kind of conference or a Zoom call, Google Meet, who all will be included, and who are kind of necessary partners, who are kind of added listeners to this, and then plan stakeholder engagement in terms of how we going to understand each and every stakeholder, if it's a critical, non-critical, critical being sanctioning authority, critical being his say on a project objective, his say on overall, how we can do the given analysis, the requirement up to a great extent. So he is a kind of critical stakeholder, critical participant working with me to gather requirements. Then I basically jot down the list of such people in terms of stakeholder name, their designation, positions, even authority, best time to call, what he prefers in terms of time to call. Did he meet he or she like discussing while walking, eating, or something like that? Then you might want to mention there. So we collect all such data to make sure our requirement gathering is the most efficient process here. Then we have business analysis governance in terms of how we're going to govern this thing, how we can time box it, how what type of meetings I have to cover in the next day, next to next day, and so on and so forth. Or overall, how much time do I require to collect these requirements and then build this document called SRS, System Requirement Specification, where I do include high level diagram, use case diagram, and couple of others diagram, like fishbone diagram, the decision analysis chart or artifacts as per the need, as per the policy and procedure of my company. Then plan business analysis, information management in terms of where do I store information, should I store it locally as well as cloud, or add a backup copy, depending upon the critical of the project for your organizations. You normally plan these things ahead so that you won't miss a single data point. You might have some extra data point till we complete the process, and then we clean the data whenever we close this project. But before that, we keep almost all the data which came to you, which is given by client, even including the client supplied material. Sometimes client might give you some sort of a photograph, some sort of a drawing suggestions, the preference, even non-performance objectives or non-functional requirements, and all those things are normally coming out of discussions. So we try to basically have these jotted down somewhere, even as a footnote of minutes of meeting, which can be really useful while defining the final requirement. And that's why this is really important to have a storage given to you to store all these business analysis document which we are creating. Then identify business analysis performance improvement. How can I improve myself? Do I have to meet and greet personally every time? No need. We can have a Google Meet call. Or what we can do, we can request the web development team to create some sort of a questionnaire web page so that I can share the link to on WhatsApp, email, whatever is kind of suitable for me, and then the person can basically do the questionnaire at their leisure within allotted days of time. So you might allot 3 days, 4 days, or a week at the most. If there are a good number of people overseas, you might use this web service as the best instrument. So depending upon how I improve my performance, I keep these thought process alive of building some efficiency within my business analysis policies and procedures. The outputs are business analysis approach. As we seen business analysis approach in terms of how we're going to do the meeting, online, offline, personal, lunch, dinner, wine, dine, or meet at a sports events or something like that. I need to mention in this business analysis approach. So what will my approach to the given analysis for a given client? Then I build a list of stakeholder where I write down how should I approach, or what's the best way to approach to a given stakeholder. Then I govern the approach, and I'll mention it in a governance of approach. Even information management approach can be included, and I might have a kind of business management plan for a given project created by me. That's another additional document, a word document or an Excel sheet, which includes all these 5 entities. These are not deliverable documents, but it's good to have so that if anybody asks, could you please share your information management approach, what you use for this project? So rather than keep discussing or wasting time in a meeting, I'll give him a link on a cloud server where the auditor, the reviewer, the boss, or the client can have a look at that document at his leisure, rather than I'm wasting time with him, like he's reading the document. I'm looking at or I'm basically kind of wasting my time on a larger scale, right? And then we have business analysis performance assessment. I keep assessing my performance. I might keep this document private if at all you have created document. But normally in most of the company, we don't require a document to be created for my own performance assessment. Okay, or otherwise it's done by the appraisal system. Okay, that's altogether different scenario. Okay, does anybody have any question, conclusion on this first knowledge area till this time?
No, sir.
Yeah, good, right? Okay, so let's move further. So let's move on to sixth knowledge area. Second knowledge area. We have six knowledge area to cover, which encompasses the total of how business analysis is done in terms of best practices, in terms of how we have learned till date. The second knowledge area is a bit cryptic in terms of nomenclature. It's called elicitation and collaboration. So elicitation is a technique where you convert the vision to requirements, or vision to a kind of list of product features or functionalities and so on and so forth. So elicitation is a process. Normally, it's a kind of legal word, if I may say. Here, what we are trying to do, we are trying to basically build a list of requirements, build a list of conceptual solution to be given to the development team, the construction team, right? So here, what we are trying to do, we are trying to convert the thought process in terms of a person or person's vision for a given solution, for a given enhancement, and get it converted to a feature list, functionalities, and so on. So this process is normally labeled as elicitation in normally business analysis working culture. Okay, and the collaboration is we normally collaborate with client on almost day-to-day basis. You have so many meetings to understand the requirement, to basically go to the nth level to make sure this requirement is complete in its sense, with the background, with the priority scenario and everything. Okay, so elicitation and collaboration describes the task that business analysts perform to prepare and conduct elicitation activity. and confirm the result obtained. So here what we are talking about any and all activities and the sanctions approvals we do for elicitation and collaboration. It means that what type of requirements are we collecting, how we are collecting, and how we are getting sanctioned it. The process of it. And that's why it's an elicitation and collaboration process. It also describes the communication between with the stakeholder once the business analysis information is assembled. They are talking about the approvals, the last minute addition to the given requirement list or a wish list. We keep the wish list separate because wish list need not to be approved. The requirements which are approved are normally in the list of requirements. And the wish list is kind of wish list just stand there in the backdrop in case if somebody wants to read in depth of these requirement gathering processes, they might refer to the wish list as well. But wish list is a kind of optional list. Okay, the ongoing collaboration with them throughout the business analysis activity. We are talking about various other meetings also which we have conducted with the client, with the stakeholder to make sure we got the completeness of these requirement. Now let me tell you, I have a really good video of understanding top 10 requirements elicitation techniques, and this is one of the most uh, a good video where the person have explained how to have these requirement gathering techniques to be done in the most efficient way. So let me show you that video. Give me a minute. Okay, it's a small 10-minute video, and we'll try to understand how we can basically create the list of requirement effectively. Okay, let's have a look at this video and then we'll take the questions.
Hello there. How can you really know what your client wants? It is essential.
This is a copyright of Perfect BA organizations. We normally refer to such video where we will try to understand how we can effectively do the elicitation technique, right? So this is more about elicitation technique, uh, how we normally understand the vision and convert into the list of requirement, list of features, list of product. Okay, let's hear them out and then we'll take question and answer.
But it is not always easy to find out without the proper technique. Elicitation is the process of getting information from your stakeholders about their needs. But how well elicitation works depends on what techniques you apply and how successfully. There is no one winning formula. You have to decide what method best suits your client's culture, work style, and business. The good news is that there are many elicitation techniques to try. There are three different types of methods: collaborative, research based, and experiments. You can use them in many ways, from combining elicitation techniques to using just one. Technique number one: document analysis. Analyzing business documents is a popular elicitation technique. Documents can include manuals, reports, and plans. It is a method that can give you information on the current state of the business and any processes it is using. And you can identify gaps in the processes and where solutions need to be applied. When you are analyzing the business documents, have a way to verify documents. Also have a way to collate information like a spreadsheet. Like a good resume, this method is more likely to work if records are up to date and verifiable. This method takes time, and you may face obstacles such as specific documentation not being made available to you. However, it can give you essential details for further elicitation sessions. Technique number two: mind mapping. Mind mapping is something you may have done in different environments. It is a collaborative approach you can do with the clients. It is a great way to bounce ideas off each other in a relaxed and visual way. There are also many mind map applications if you want to use technology for this method. The key is to make it as visual as possible to articulate all the ideas shared.
We're going to learn mind maps as well, and we might do a hands-on practice on mind maps as well. Okay, so these tools we are going to learn in a step-by-step fashion throughout our different sessions. Okay, just have a look at these.
Select your participants and define the agenda. Do you want to identify needs, solutions, or both? What essential questions will you be asking? Questions can be general, such as what needs are not being met, to identify problem areas. Questions can also be specific to needs, such as what can be done to prevent this problem in the future. Make sure each participant has equal time to share ideas and feel valued. This elicitation technique works best with small groups of a maximum of 6 to 8. However, you could make it a team activity where groups mind map together, then present to the rest of the teams. If you do this, create a final list of ideas at the end. Participants can give any last feedback or voice any of their needs that you did not record. Technique number 3, focus groups. Governments and businesses continue to use focus groups for many reasons. A report found globally $2.2 billion was spent on them in a year. Focus groups involve participants discussing a specific idea or problem. There is usually an impartial moderator who assists you. You can have pre-planned questions, but it is an open discussion. You can determine attitudes, needs, and ideas through this method. Technique number 4, interviews. Interviews are the most common option for elicitation. You can use them in different business markets without a problem. And you can also build strong relationships with the stakeholders you interview. Interviews are usually with an individual and planned. This way, you and the interviewee have time to prepare. Decide whether you want a structured interview with questions or an unstructured interview. An unstructured interview is more informal and more of a discussion. Take notes or record to remember everything that the interviewee shares. The information can help shape your requirement documents and other processes. Technique number 5, observation. As they say, action speaks louder than words. Stakeholders or users might not even consciously know what their needs are. Observation is a way for you to identify needs and understand the business processes. People often act differently when they know they are being observed. Let participants know in advance to ease any anxiety. Share the goals of the observation and reassure them that you are not judging them. Also, decide if it is an active observation or a passive one. Active observation is when you ask questions and try tasks. Passive observation is when you remain silent and do not participate. Technique number 6, interface analysis. You can use interface analysis when combining elicitation methods. You look at the components between systems and how well they communicate. There could be risks to the project if communication is not efficient. You can look at how humans interact with the interfaces. You can also look at how external applications or hardware interact together. You can create a diagram of how the data interacts to visualize the process. You can then work out what applications need to be integrated into the new system. Interface analysis makes sure the system meets standards and requirements. You have to have access to all the components for this elicitation method to work. Technique number 7, questionnaires and surveys. You can use questionnaires to survey a large group. You can cover a lot of information in a short amount of time, but prepare to remind stakeholders to complete the forms. Make sure the questions are direct without ambiguity. You can ask open ended questions where the respondents can write the answers in their own words. It is harder to quantify these answers, but you can gain more insight. Or you can provide answers to choose from. This is close ended. Different business markets will require questions depending on systems and the needs. You can quantify responses and provide statistical feedback. Technique number 8, Requirements Workshop. A requirements workshop is a formal option for elicitation. You bring stakeholders and users together to discuss ideas. It is a process driven way to discover, clarify, and consider requirements. Carefully select attendees and recreate a scribe to record everything. There should be a neutral facilitator to guide the workshop and keep it on track. Usually, workshops are only for a day or two. You may also hear the term Joint Application Development (JAD). This gets stakeholders, the project team, and users together in a workshop setting. The difference is that all participants determine the requirements, not just analysts. Workshops are an efficient way to obtain information and establish strong connections. Technique number 9, Prototyping. Prototyping is one of the experimental elimination techniques. You create mock-ups of products to identify the requirements. You can also prototype after you try other elicitation techniques. You provide the client with the product demos. It is common for analysts to uncover missing requirements, or you can use mock-ups to clarify unspecified requests. Prototypes are a good way for clients to visualize products such as systems or parts of the systems. It is a process to affirm ideas and start putting them into reality. Prototyping requires time and investment. Often, flaws will be identified and clients can request any changes, but it is also a great way to elicit ideas from them. Technique number 10, Process Modeling. Process modeling is when you analyze and discuss the company's business processes. Methods are broken down into manageable steps for stakeholders to discuss. It is one of the collaborative elicitation techniques, but you can analyze beforehand to identify the processes that need to be discussed. You can look at manual and automatic systems, but the more complex the system, the more work it may take to explain it. So carefully select who will be involved. Create a visual diagram or description of the process. You can put people into groups to explain processes they are most familiar with too. You can also organize a group name where they walk through the process if appropriate. It is an alternative way to generate discussion and identify areas of improvement. Often, processes are not closely analyzed to understand all the essential steps. Once this is done, what needs to be changed becomes apparent. Stakeholders will also benefit if they work across different business markets. This method can help them to understand the systems to recognize what they want to improve. You can also use this when combining elicitation techniques. For example, it can generate discussion in focus groups. Did you enjoy this video? If so, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We post videos regularly on business analysis techniques, tools, and tutorials. Like and share the video. Thank you.
So this way we do have such videos showcased time to time during our training session, which gives you a good idea in terms of another in a trainer's perspective, so that how we do the elicitation and these are the top 10 tools. We are going to learn quite a good amount of additional tools to this, so that we'll understand how to complete the elicitation in its sense the way business require. Again, for some specific domains we might have some specific tools, and we'll discuss this thing when we start learning the tools, right? So we're going to start learning the tools once we complete these six knowledge area, and there we'll basically try to understand tools one at a time. um, Good evening, Manjunatha. Manjunatha, please, we are joined by a new participant here called Manjunatha, sir, and he is basically going to be with us throughout this learning. Manjunatha, sir, could you hear us, sir? Okay. Could you please tell us about yourself, like, your background, your experience, so that we could be able to, interact with you with more effectively?
Mm, Yes, I'm a like new entrant to this domain.
Okay.
I've been working as in the IT industry, but in a different sectors. Like I was working as a
Your voice is breaking, sir.
incident problem change. Now I'm going to look at my future career, project management and some business analysis. Join me.
We
Yes.
can't hear you clearly, sir. The things are, I think, signal is a challenge there, or is it like my internet connection?
Okay. Now are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah. Have you worked in IT, sir, before?
Yes. I have worked
Okay. You work in IT as a sir means like which type of roles have you performed in information technology? We couldn't hear you. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's have this thing at the end of our session, so we can the signal problem might have resolved by that time. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's try to basically go through the other. So this is the kind of knowledge area we talk about: elicitation and collaboration. Now let's try to understand this from an input, tasks, and output perspective. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to understand what type of inputs we get whenever we try to do these elicitation and collaboration processes. Then what type of work I means as a business analyst I need to perform for such elicitation collaboration processes, and then what type of output is expected out of me. Okay, so these are, as we discussed, this is a standard way of learning in terms of your understanding a management process. So because every management process have some input, some processing and output. So we'll basically try to understand this even in the project management knowledge space. If you have additional questions, please do ask. Don't stop yourself from asking questions. There are no right or wrong questions. Here we are learning together, right? So it's a group learning. So please don't stop yourself. Okay. So let's try to understand. And this picture I've taken it from the book itself, which is a copyright of IIBA, International Business Analysis Consortium, where they have the best practices. They normally try to define the reference material for business analysis policy and processes. So let's go over it. The inputs are, of course, the needs which we get converted into requirement, business analysis information in terms of background, the additional requirement, the support requirement, and everything else. Stakeholder engagement approach, similar as we understood in the last knowledge area. Business analysis performance assessment, similar as we understand in the last knowledge area. The task we do are prepare for elicitation. Again, like in the last knowledge area, where we try to prepare for the complete business analysis activity, but here we are trying to prepare for the elicitation activity. What do you mean by that? Whatever you're trying to collect as a data, whenever you're trying to collect some sort of information, we might need to prepare ourselves for the tools which are going to use. Can I use pen and paper? Can I use a voice recorder, and so on and so forth? Mostly for all business analysis, voice recorders are necessary, so are provided by the organizations we are working for, because we don't want to miss any discussions during the requirement gathering, right? So for that matter, all these voice recordings, the mp3 files or whatever voice format your voice record supports, you normally upload those files to the cloud server, so that even auditors, the development team can refer to those audio files in terms of how were the discussions went. Is the stakeholder opened enough? Is the stakeholder is free and frank to share his thought process, wish list for a given requirement, and so on, so forth. So that's why we normally have these elicitation preparation thought process in a given organizations. In their quality management process, you might find a document saying, okay, the checklist for preparation for elicitation. Believe me, all IT majors like Infosys, Wipro, TCS, Cognizant, they have their checklist in their cloud, or what we call knowledge base. Knowledge base is a place on the cloud where all such references, material, templates, standardized checklists are normally stored. So whenever you join an organization, they might have a consultancy induction program or an employee induction program where you might go through all such directories, so storages, archival available to you to basically get your templates, get your standardized document to be applied to your work, so that you can use this templates to reduce your work up to a great extent. Believe me, sometimes you just fill in 10 to 15 fill in the blanks for a given interview, for a given discussions you have, and then the rest of the thing, the template normally have those details already included there. And in support of that, you might include the audio file as well, which serves the purpose, like if anybody want to analyze the meeting afterwards, he or she can refer to the given audio file, and he or she can basically verify the facts you have entered into the requirements list. Okay, conduct elicitation. So how do you conduct elicitation? Same like interviewing techniques, surveys, and the whole 9 yards of it. We just discussed the 10 most popular tools, and we're going to learn most of them. We're going to discuss each of these tools and try to understand how could you do the elicitation better. And we are going to use all those modern tools which are available today, like the audio recorders, like the UML diagram, Unified Modeling Language Diagram, and there are various other tools which we have just learning, which are used as of today. And then conduct the elicitation. These tools, whatever you use, create an output. It can be image file, audio file, word file, Excel file. What all files have been created as an output of these elicitation processes, we normally archive it on our cloud, whatever cloud the organization is using. Again, cloud storage is like Google Drive, or storing your content at a particular logical server. And that logical server can be in US, Canada, Spain, Europe, India, Asia, wherever your company find its partner, cloud service partner, more effectively storing their data, more economically storing the data for a given project or projects. And this way, we normally get access to the cloud to store this file permanently. Whenever somebody wants to audit, review, analyze, they can go at that location, and I will not be bothered. This is the way the normal today's remote working is remote work is getting executed. Then confirm elicitation result. This means that we normally create a list of requirement after elicitation. That's the output of the elicitation, which are included in the list of requirement, and in that list we also mention where this requirement came from. This requirement can be extracted out of a minutes of meeting, elicitation process, some discussions, surveys. What are the tools you have used? So you normally mention the tools where that requirement have been deduced from, and this way we maintain something called traceability of a requirement. And this is really one of the most crucial artifact we create in terms of building the traceability. Traceability is really a big topic for almost all types of management, in project management, in business analysis. we build something called requirement traceability matrix, which is a kind of table, and we're going to study this in the one session in depth. What is the RTM? This is referred as a RTM. So whenever somebody asks you an interview question, what is RTM? RTM is requirement traceability matrix, which is a table where you normally have all the list of requirement traced back to the discussion day point file where you have extracted that requirement from, and then you normally send this RTM for approval with the list of requirement to the given stakeholder. So that stakeholder say, yes, you have understood the requirement, which is complete in its sense. So now you can basically move on to the gathering other requirement. And once you finish with gathering almost all the requirement, you might give this list, or you transfer the knowledge to the construction team, development team, as per the need, and as per the policy and process of organization you are working for. Then 4.4, we communicate business analysis information for approval, for validation, review, suggestion, modification. And this is what we call the requirement list approval process, where we get the requirement, whatever we collected, approved from the particular party mentioned in the contract agreement with that client. So when I'm working as a business analyst for Infosys, and my client is a State Farm, as we normally discussed in our standard example, where I am building an enhanced attendance management system for State Farm. There's a Mr. VP who have initiated these discussions, vision shared with us. Then we have subsequent a few meetings with these, that visionary, as well as a few of his office colleagues, and we jot down some requirement list where I might have some 50, 60 functionalities and features needs to be included in my solution. Now let's try to understand what type of list do I build. So first number, I want to have an automated solution. This is a kind of big task, right? Automated solution. So we are trying to reduce the human intervention in collecting data. That's what the automation means. Then I want to have a 24 by 7 solution. What do you mean by 24 by 7? No holidays. The least possible time it should be down in a year, say at least for a couple of minutes or couple of hours, is allowable in a given 24 by this 24 by 7 type of solution. So this attendance management system, which we are developing for State Farm, me as an analyst working at Infosys, where I'm basically drafting this SRS, system requirement specification, for State Farm, to make sure I have collected all the requirements list for this given solution. So first, they want an automated solution. They want 24 by 7, so there shouldn't be any holiday for this solution. It want to be a kind of efficient as well. So the attendance should be noted within max to max 25 seconds. That's what a kind of performance requirement given by the client. And there could be such many such requirements, like whenever they enter into office, it should be done manually with the least possible efforts, and so on and so forth. We will try to build a list of requirements, and that's the all whatever we do in our hands-on workshop. Okay, and we'll work together to build such list of requirement, or build a communication document to be shared with the client, your reporting officer, and the other business analyst as well. Okay, and we'll do a kind of hands-on workshop on this. So don't worry. Manage stakeholder collaboration. What do you mean by manage stakeholder collaboration? There could be two stakeholders claiming to have contradictory requirements. These things do happen in real life. Theoretically, it might not be possible, but practically, there could be such scenario like two stakeholders can share a kind of contradictory requirement. This thing do happen. Like some want the web page of a light green color, some want dark green color. I'm just sharing an a contradictory requirement with you for a example purpose. So here we need to decide which to be applied to our development, or which need to be considered as an approval requirement. So what we do, we normally go to the product owner, the visionary of the requirement, and ask him, hey, Mr. Product Owner, person A says a light green, person B says dark green. What do you suggest? Which should we finalize as a finalized requirement or a finalized color for that web page. So that product owner might choose either of them, or he might suggest the third as well. But as the product owner is the ultimate sanctioning authority, we treat that as a final requirement, approved sanction requirement, and which will get included in our list with the date, time, second, date, day of the week kind of timestamp included in the RTM. Saying ki Mr. Product Owner have been approved this requirement on 8th September 10:30 p.m. while we were discussing at so and so place, and he said let's go ahead with this color which is sanctioned and approved by him. And whenever you send this document to him, he's also concurred in writing via email saying, okay, yes, we discussed and this is what is approved. So that's why we need to manage our stakeholder collaboration in terms of who is the senior most authority, who have a say in our requirement gathering process, right? And then the outputs which are expected out of business analysts are elicitation activity plan. How do you want to perform the elicitation activities? Which type of voices recorder do you have? Where we are basically going to start elicitation, when it's planned to end, and so on and so forth. Then we normally have an elicitation list which are not confirmed. We normally upload all the document at least once a day to the cloud. There are some documents which are not approved, not sanctioned, but still we do upload it as an version document, and we'll discuss about how we build this versioning. Okay, which is a kind of integral part of now all the policies and processes of a standard organization. Wherever you apply standardization like capability maturity model, CMM, the ISO in the international standard organizations, and various other documentation standard, where versioning of this document is an integral part of the release of this document. So every document we release to the cloud is normally versioned. I'll tell you how we version these documents for given organizations. There are some sort of a labeling also done in some organizations, but fine, we'll learn about these things. Okay, then the elicitation result which are confirmed. So once it's sanctioned by the client, it is approved. But as we normally work on Agile Scrum way, the requirement list keep getting updated, keep getting better day by day. So in that scenario, the list of release, the time of release is important here, and the time of release is normally referred in the release document or in the release label or a versioning system. The business analysis information communicated in terms of so and so persons have approved this requirement list. It's complete, and we are going to complete the rest of the requirement in coming weeks, coming days. We might mention a plan or a kind of tentative completion date. And tentative completion date is to be mentioned because even the clients has to plan his activity, interview, survey, whatever you want to do it from his or her side. And that's why we normally mention the business analysis information in terms of where it's being sent, stored, and how it's communicated. Then, as we discussed, stakeholder engagement, same as we discussed in the last knowledge area. I'll just build a list of stakeholder where I have a name, best time to call, how to call, is it a Google phone, this meet, that meet. Then how this given stakeholder is important from the standpoints of approvals, his authority, and all those things which are included in the stakeholder list, or we can call it stakeholder list as well. It's a simple table where we have all this information collected progressively in a step-by-step manner. Does anybody have any confusion in input, processing, and output in the elicitation and collaboration way?
No, sir.
We are good, right? Please do ask questions if you have any confusion. Okay, discussion is always encouraged. Don't worry about the timeline. We might complete in 3 months, but we need to understand whatever we're learning from the root of it, so that we can include these activity even in our day-to-day life. Believe me, these knowledge area have been evolved over decades. Means they have been included a good number of thought processes, discussions, and evolution in the whole knowledge area processes. That's why these are really important to understand the knowledge area and the way we apply this knowledge area for the business analysis policies and processes. Okay, let me move to the next slide here. The third knowledge area is requirement lifecycle management. And as we just discussed, we collect requirement, we process requirement, we approve requirement, sanction requirement, and then we include this requirement into a document called all approved requirement, approved requirement into the SRS called System Requirement Specification. Okay, and that's the normal name which is used by almost 80-85% of the organization. But some organizations, they might call as a business requirement document, they might call them as a requirement document, depending upon the organization you join, their policies, procedure, quality management system, you normally label this document accordingly. The way Guru School works, we have interview support, we have project support as well. So in case they are referring to a document which are not which contains all such details which are normally included in the SRS, I'll guide you then and there. So you don't have to worry about such misleading document. And I am there to basically guide you in terms of this is the SRS document. That is a kind of part of SRS document, or these organizations have three different documents for a single SRS. These things do happen in a real life, and I am there to guide you for on the at the nth level, and that's how we're going to understand how the requirement processes is adopted in your organizations you are working with. Okay, now let's try to understand this third knowledge area. The requirement lifecycle management describes the task that business analysts perform in order to manage and maintain the requirements and design information from the inception to retirement. Inception in the sense when you first understand a requirement from a visionary, product owner, executive, of a client, of a stakeholder, and then you jot down in the list of requirement. You refine the requirement, you elicit the requirement to a level. You might convert this requirement into future product list, feature list, or functionality to be supported by a given product, solution, support services. And these are kind of inception of a requirement. Now this requirement is handed over to the development team to be included in a product, solution, support services, and then they start developing this thing, they start constructing one way or the another. And after they constructed this thing, after they're building this software, solution, support, project, services, whatever they are supposed to build, they release to the client for something called user acceptance testing, where user accepts the delivery so as to conformance with the requirement. This is also called as a requirement conformance process in terms of deliveries. Now once the client accepts the deliveries, the software development solution, whatever you created, you hand it over to the client, and then every product solution support has a life cycle. In the sense, the product solution support can last for few years, few decades, few century, depending upon the product. You might want to retire that. Now whenever the product gets retired, so every requirement have a timeline, and these timelines are mentioned in the RTM as well. So that requirement starting from inception, conceiving to a retirement, we normally include these details into the RTM. And that's why they say the complete life cycle of a requirement is from inception to retirement, and the whole 9 years in between them. These tasks describe establishing meaningful relationship between the related requirements. So we group the requirement also, and design. We normally process the requirement for designing and assessing, analyzing, and gaining consensus on a proposed changes to the requirement and design. So there are two ways to understand requirement. One for a development project, another for a enhancement project. Like we are discussing in our standard example, where me working as an analyst at Infosys, I am doing an enhancement attendance management system for a state farm, which is a matured insurance company, and their offices into 6 different countries. So what we have zeroed down till date, we have started collecting the requirement. We have collected the requirement of they need to have automated system 24/7, should work on holidays, should include all centralized database, the or even the transfer of employees from one office to another should be mentioned in the attendance management system, and so on and so forth. So these are the few requirements we were discussing. So here, if you create something like biometric attendance system, so for every employee, they need to put their finger, thumb, whatever they want to put, and get their attendance notified to an automated system, which basically connected to a cloud server where the system pushes data at a real time. So if Ravindra Pande puts his finger into the St. Louis State Farm office, the data center at let's say Kansas gets updated with Ravindra Pande started his working day at so and so time, so and so date, so and so nanosecond, so and so day of the week, and his attendance is notified, and all his leave records and everything else goes with it, because there are lots of processes happens in the background for a single attendance, so that he accrued the pay for that day, and so on so forth. So okay, these processes also triggered within the system automatically, and that's why we required automation. So all such grouped requirements which get triggers in the background as well have to be connected to each other. So in the requirement list, we normally put these requirements together. We call it requirement group or group of requirements, and we'll basically do a hands-on experience on this group of requirement also. And in the high level diagram, I'll guide you how can you put the group of requirements together to make your life easy, so that the person who is reading these requirements are understanding the thought process behind these requirements, how they are getting grouped together. Have you understood the fundamental behind cycle of requirements and group of requirements? Any questions so far?
No, sir.
Am I talking too technical? Do stop me. These things do happen at a given time. I might go too technical. So if you don't understand, please do ask. Okay. Let me move to the next slide, where we'll try to understand in terms of input, processing, and output perspective of a requirement lifecycle management. This is the third knowledge area which we are reading from the book. The inputs are requirement. Here they have not mentioned needs, they have mentioned requirements, which is a kind of an evolution of the needs. We list down the requirements, we are basically get them sanctioned from the client, and these list of requirements. Now we also input the design. Designs here means the designs which are suggested by the client. So how does client suggest designs? Well, for a given office in St. Louis, Bloomington, the client might suggest, I have 4 doors right now to the office or entry to the building. I might have more door installed. So please scale up your application, scale up your solution to accommodate those 2 additional doors. These 2 additional doors can be especially for CEOs, CTOs, or the work the cleaning staff. Okay, it might happen, right? So for such scenario, and to make some relevant adjustment in my requirement. So all these designs in a kind of conceptual enhancement to the solutions also included in my requirement documents. And then process change or proposed change. What do you mean by proposed change? It's the same example we'll do. As the client have said, in my St. Louis office to a building A, I have 4 doors right now, but I am supposed to have 2 more lifts, 2 more door for a direct top level access, so that whoever top bosses come into that conference room on the top floor, 10th or 12th floor, they could be able to go to that floor without any disturbance, or without the disturbance from any day-to-day employee working in that office. So that can be also included in your enhancement attendance management solution like this. So these kind of change are also included in the requirement. And basically, when you work in an agile scrum way, you are ready for accepting the change. What does that mean? We do change our solution quite frequently than you thought of. So here we working with a development sprint or a development cycle, where we do include something called proposed change in the given cycle and make it more efficient for a given client. And that's why we normally include these proposed change to our requirement also. These are change applied to the requirement here. And we have not started the design or architecting from our technologically partner ground side. So we have not included designers and architect to design solution as of now, but still we are including the proposed change into the list of requirements. Then we have requirements verified, sanctioned. So wherever there is a word called verified, please read it as a approved or a sanctioned requirement. Okay, so this is the list of requirements which are sanctioned and the list of proposed change also. As a business analyst, it's my duty to make sure the new suggested requirement doesn't contradict with the approved or verified requirement. That's why I have this list as an input to the requirement lifecycle management knowledge area. Does that make sense? Anybody have any confusion as of now?
No, sir.
Yeah, right? Okay. Let's take a step forward. Now here we are looking for trace requirement. I talked to you, I just talked in the last knowledge area where is something called traceability of requirements. So what is traceability of requirement? You trace the requirement from the point it discussed to the point it's included in the list to the point it's approved by a given person, authority at a given time. So we include something called timestamp. Timestamp is a variable included into computer which includes day of the week, or rather I'll tell you sequentially. It includes year, month, day of the week, time, hours, minutes, seconds, nanoseconds, so that no two requirements are taken at the same timestamp. This timestamp make sure all these requirements or all these processing are unique to their nanosecond level. And that's why I trace this requirement to make sure whenever that requirement has been recorded, sanctioned, approved, moved to the verified requirement list, which has to be developed by the development team at a later stage. And that's why I make a table called requirement traceability table or requirement traceability matrix, as is normally referred throughout the globe, throughout the different development scenario on the earth. So RTM is a standard verbose for all business analysts or project management bodies where we use requirement traceability matrix, which is a simple table where I have a serial number, requirement description, the requirement inserted point, requirement approved point, requirement verified, and basically moved to the final requirement table. And I normally attach all these timestamp included in the RTM itself. So RTM is a good big table, believe me, and I'll show you the RTM as well so that you can understand why it's needed and how it's used throughout the development life cycle. Okay, then maintain requirement. Again, you maintain the requirement in the RTM itself because you are maintaining the complete traceability of the requirement starting from its inception to the retirement. Then prioritize the requirement. So whenever we sanction the requirement, we ask the client to guide us which requirement should we complete first. Should we develop the web page first? Should we develop the Android application first? Should we develop the BlackBerry or iOS application first? Depending upon the client requirement, we do prioritize these development creation activities in our project management plan. But these priorities are also mentioned in the RTM. If not in the RTM, you can have a separate table of a called requirement list, and where you normally mention these priority scenario dependencies of the requirements one another with the complete table, which can be a separate or a part of RTM as well. And these are the standard document inclusion we have in terms of SRS, and that's what we need to understand. And we're going to do a hands-on practice on SRS as well. We normally do assess requirement changes as well. So if an analyst might come across a requirement which is changing frequently, so what you normally do, you normally go to product owner saying, hey Mr. Product Owner, these requirements have changed at least 5-6 times earlier. Could you please zero down or have a discussion with your team and come back to me which can be a final requirement so that I can hand it over to the development team. And so there are policies and processes depending upon your organizations and the client organizations. How do you assess the requirement change, or how do you take a corrective action for frequently changing requirement, then approve requirements. So here we get the requirement approved from the client with the scenario, priorities, and the different timestamp attached to the table as well. So here we update the RTM documents, which can be a single output of this requirement lifecycle management. Does that make sense to you? Everybody understood RTM, or do I need to explain it again? we are
Yes,
going
sir.
to we are going to have a detailed discussions on RTM, which is a kind of independent slide. I'll share with you mostly, I think, next to next seminar or next to next sessions, and we'll understand RTM in depth. So don't worry about that. But do you got an idea what requirement lifecycle management is in case of business analysis?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Let move further. Let's try to understand the output of it. Okay. Again, the outputs are requirement trace. So RTM, requirement traceability matrix, as an output. Again, design traced. These kind of images, nowadays we take a photograph of a mobile, or the person or the client who is suggesting this design might upload that design to our cloud server, and we might include in our archival saying this is the design, a trace for a given requirement. Then requirement maintained in the RTM to understand when we actually started gathering a requirement till its retirement phase. Then even designs are also maintained, because sometimes the two-door addition can move to a three-door addition, or they might scrap the idea of additional doors as well. So depending upon the flexibility of requirement gathering, we might have the design to be maintained in some scenario, but it's a far and few. Then again, I'll get a requirement prioritized in the same RTM, or I might maintain a separate Excel sheet called requirement list, where I include requirement number, requirement, and requirement priorities scenario as per given by the client. Similarly, the design also. So if my client says, I'm going to include one door in the month of October and another door in the month of December, can happen, right? So here I need to prioritize that design, or prioritize that application of a biometric in the new door at some point in time, and I need to include those plan in my project plan as well. Then requirement change assessment, as we just discussed. If there are some too frequent changing requirement, I might basically nominate such requirement to the client itself, and ask him or her to get it sorted out. Same to do with the design change assessment as well. And as a final list, I have a list of requirements which are final and approved, and even designs, if at all there, those are also final and approved designs. So these are the kind of 5 outputs I have created throughout the requirement lifecycle management. Mostly there are only 2 documents physically. First is my requirement traceability document, and second is requirements. If I keep a separate requirement prioritization and scenario list, which is to be output of this requirement lifecycle management. Does anybody have any confusion on this slide or the outputs of requirement lifecycle management?
No, sir.
Yeah, good, right? I used to have a video of requirement lifecycle management. Give me a minute. Let me, no. Okay, no problem. Okay, so let's go here. Where am I? Okay, let me move to the next knowledge area. The fourth knowledge area is a strategy analysis. As we discussed in our last session, there are tactics and there are strategies. Tactics in the sense, the plan you do for the current challenging scenario within, let's say, few weeks, few months, okay? But if you're planning much ahead, like let's say more than 3 months, more than 6 months, that plan is called strategic plan. Let me give you an example. You have an old car you normally take to the office every day. Now you want to purchase a new car. Now, is it a tactical or strategic decision? If you want to purchase a new car 6 months down the line, it's a strategy you are talking about. If you want to purchase a car in the next week, that's a kind of tactical arrangement. So you don't have sufficient time to analyze such thought process. which car should I buy, which is good for mileage or good for luxury. It should be, powerful car or a, normal, small, mini or coupe could do. So I might think of Dodge Neon, I might think of Chevy Blaze, or a small car which can hardly accommodate for grown-up individuals. Or I can have something like Toyota Camry, Corolla, or Toyota or Lexus, BMW, whatnot. So I can go to the nth different options, but still the decision in terms of thinking it through, the long term planning is what required, right? Because I need to consider the economics of the world, I need to consider the actual requirement, and the show off I need to do throughout my life kind of scenario, or the brand building I need to do for myself kind of scenario. Here there are a good number of variables at a play, and I might need to sit down and evolve these thoughts over a few months. Then that's a strategic analysis, and that's what we are talking about. All these requirements are normally included in a strategic analysis process. So strategy analysis describes the business analysis work that must be performed to collaborate with stakeholder in order to identify a need of a strategic or a tactical importance as per the business approvals, business sanctions, business need. Enable the enterprise to address that the need and align the resulting strategy for the change with the higher and lower level strategies. Again, within strategies, we have a higher and lower level. Higher level in the sense costly or more critical item, lower level strategy in the sense economical and lower, a kind of smaller items, not so critical, not so costly items. Okay, so this way I do build this strategic analysis, or in a way I analyze each and requirement on a strategic level and even categorize this the requirement as a critical, costly, in terms of mission critical, vision critical, and all those kind of scenario. Okay, so let's try to understand from input, processing, and output way how we strategize, analyze these requirements. So here we take input as a need. We also understand the influences, internal or external. Like we discussed, there could be some contradictory requirements gathered, or there could be two different analysts gathering contradictory requirement. So when you try to concise, or when you try to add up this requirement to the actual requirement life cycle, or actual requirement traceability, or actual requirement list table, at that time you might come across such challenges. So then you need to understand what type of influence do I have. Can I go to directly to product owner, or one of the requirement is given by a very senior person and the other is basically just an executive at the organization. So I can ignore the executive's requirement and mention a reason this requirement have been overridden by the requirement given by the product owner or a senior member of fraternity, which we find it more relevant to the given product. So we need to basically take in inputs of all such levels of sanctions and the requirements coming from resources kind of scenario. Then we have stakeholder engagement approach. This is specifically mentioned here to eliminate all the contradictory requirement, all the confusioning requirement, so that we might go and plan additional meeting with a product owner or a senior fraternity member who is a kind of sanctioning authority to make sure whatever requirement we include in our requirement table is a finalized correct requirement. Then elicitation result, which are unconfirmed in terms of how to add these feature product list in the actual finalized requirement. Then also I'll get those elicitation results confirmed from an authority, sanctioning authority. And then same thing with the designs as well. All these designs which are supplied by a client or even drawn by me as a conceptual design, high level diagrams, they are need to be prioritized, they are need to be attained, listed in my SRS in the sequential manner of a development, or in a sequential priorities the way client have suggested. Same thing with the requirement also. So I keep shuffling these requirement lists in terms of this thing to be developed first, this thing to be created first, that thing can be created later, or in a few weeks, in a few months, as per the requirement of a client. And this way I normally give a priority and scenario to each and every design, each and every requirement. The task I do during this strategic analysis of the requirements are analyze current stage in terms of if it's an enhancement project. I might do a gap study kind of scenario where we stand today, what needs to be done, and so on and so forth. So I might create a gap study document, or in a given new construction project, I'll try to understand where do I have to release this solution? Is it on the cloud? Is it on a physical server? Do I have to include any third party component? Do I have to install any third party component like the biometrics, iris scanners, or something like that sort? Even I need to define a future state as well. So when I implement these biometrics, is it going to satisfactory for the client? Could they do all their requirements, whatever they've asked me to do? Could the solution support all their thought process? In most of the scenario, we might satisfy around 85 to 90% of the requirement. The rest 10 can be satisfied in the further stages, or can be marked as a retired requirement. What do you mean by retired requirement? That requirement is not to be considered for the current design, current development. Okay. And then we also assess the risk in terms of certain critical scenario, like the requirement for making an artillery for a given navy ship. Now these artillery do have various mission critical entities, like those arms and ammunition, right? So there we normally include some sort of a risk in business analysis also, in terms of if it's a mission critical, time critical, or cost critical entities, we might add those risks in our analysis document, where we might mention a table called risk table, where I include risk number one. Whenever you try to install biometric, please make sure you don't shake it much, you don't bang it on somewhere, so that the lens, the light arrangement, and the scanner arrangement can be misconfigured. So I might label the biometric box as a handle with care kind of scenario, and there are risks attached to it. So whenever in transport, if something got damaged, I might need to have an extra biometric sensor handy, so that I can at least complete the work at hand. So such kind of risk I already include in all those risk table in my SRS document. And this way I keep building the requirement in its conciseness, in its completeness. In terms of other tasks are define change strategy, in terms of if there are changes expected, how do you adapt to those changes? If there are a cost which have to be shouldered with the client, if there are some challenges which we might share with the client, we have to mention those such in clear and crisp statement in my SRS as well. So as I might mention, in some scenario, very remote destination, there could be required installation of biometric. The roads are not good, so I might need to courier these biometric by a courier, where I can shoulder my risk with the courier company, and I'll make sure they have those SLA of handle with care type of documentation. So whenever they ship these biometric, they use enough packing, or they might deliver it through a helicopter or the quadcopter or whatnot. Okay, so it's basically these are the strategic planning we need to do as an analyst, to make sure whatever solution we are giving to the client is in foolproof, or is in quite stable thought process, or a stable strategic manner, or it's planned ahead for a good amount of time, so that no damages to be incurred in transit, in installation, and so on. So the output expected out of this knowledge area is current state description, the business requirement, and business objectives. So current state description talks about where we stand, what are the things to be enhanced, what are the things to be added. Then business requirement, they are talking about the list of requirement. Then business objective, they are talking about the generic objective of the project, solution, support, services, where I'm trying to do something like enhancing attendance management solution. So that's kind of my project objective or a business objective. So what all things I do within this project is in alignment for enhancing the attendance management for State Farm. So I mentioned that objective there as well. And the future state description. So What are the future state description in our normal example? All the state farm offices should be able to do their attendance automatically 24/7, and the attendance will be notified to a centralized database in the cloud server within a few seconds, few nanoseconds, so that whatever is some HR wants to pull out a report saying ki how many days Ravindra Pande is absent for a given range of days, he or she will get the actual real-time data. Like today, Ravindra is entered in office and he's working at such and such location. And these type of reports are really important nowadays because we work remotely. So if you're attached to St. Louis office, Bloomington office, Chicago office, depends on your work allocation. You might be sitting in New York and you can work for all those offices within the globe or within any country for that matter, right? And that's why it's really important to understand how this solution is going to enhanced for a future state, and that's why future state description is included in the SRS. The potential value, now here we are talking about mostly the return on investment kind of thought process. What type of values this solution is going to add to the state farms organizational kitty? So they're going to make the attendance as an efficient process to be completed within 10 to 15 seconds. Because if you ever used any biometric or iris scanner, you can get your attendance recorded within few seconds. And that's the beauty of it. And that's how the attendance system gets effectively placed around the clock with a centralized database, and the attendance getting notified within few seconds, and that's the most important part of it. So we are working towards the efficient organization here. The risk analysis result in terms of the risk mentioned, with this one with that as well. And in some scenario, like in a standard example, we might need iris scanner rather than a biometric, because biometric scanner normally get frosted in the very low temperature, so you can't put your finger to notify your attendance. So what you do, you use something called iris scanner, because our eyes are watery, they are a good reader object as far as these technologies goes. So our eye reader is really placed in a warm place where I put my eye against that reader, and the reader notifies the attendance to the server, which is a kind of bit slower but more efficient process in certain extreme weather conditions. So that's why in some offices in the Canada, like Calgary or the northern part of Canada, I might have iris scanner rather than biometrics. Iris scanner are almost 3 to 4 times costly than a biometric, but still they do the purpose, and it's a kind of requirement for a given office, for a given branch office, state farm, and that's why it's a need. So I need to understand and mention the change strategy within the SRS, within the requirement as well. Then solution scope, as we know business objectives, there we also include something like solution scope. What are the system which are going to get included in enhancing attendance management solution? Well, of course, the leave management system, because all the leaves have to be in relevance with the attendance. The payroll also in connection, in relevance, in sync with the given attendance, right? So that's why these two systems are necessarily included in attendance management solution. Now there could be a system called parking management solution. So where should I park? So Ravindra should visit office. Does it have a reserve parking, or he have a reserve parking in St. Louis office rather than Bloomington office? But whenever he comes to the Bloomington office, he should park in the guest parking area. So he should be notified, slot number so and so, or for guest parking, please park your car in the slot number so and so, which is reserved for you for 2 days, 3 days. You are going to work in this new office. So these type of solution can be or can't be part of the solution scope. So that's why we need to mention in the requirement document, and we'll understand or we'll learn, we'll practice how this solution scope is also zeroed down, or how this solution scope also controlled. And this is a kind of management decisions to include or exclude any solution, any scope in a given thought process, in a given work execution manner, or a project or a solution development. Okay, so for that we have to understand if there are any additional inclusion or additional exclusion from the current scope as well, so that whatever we are analyzing, we analyze to the inclusion of scope only. Does that make sense to you? Any confusion here? Any technical word which you need explanation again or explaining again?
No, sir.
Yeah, good, right? I've seen only one is answering. Please, think it through. If you have, you can also WhatsApp me in case of any confusion or any difficulty in understanding, and I'll be happy to share those or explain it to you as well. Okay, so please don't stop yourself from asking questions. Okay. Now, okay, we are almost at the end. So let's take overview of the fifth knowledge area in business analyst, and then we'll close this session, right? And then basically, I'll also share the link of the video which I played for you, so that you can have a look at that video. Even enroll the person, enroll the mentor or the organizations where you can find similar other videos as well. Okay, and that's a kind of normal process I follow. Now, let's take a minute and try to understand knowledge area fifth, called requirement analysis and design definition. There are two things mentioned here: requirement analysis and design definition. This is what altogether a business analyst do. But let's try to understand what are the different inclusion in the requirement analysis and the design definition. Okay, requirement analysis and design definition describes the task that business analysts perform to structure and organize the requirement discovered during the elicitation activities, specify and model the requirement and design. Here, if I can make you understand, business analysts are not supposed to be designers and architects. They are supposed to be analysts. So what we do, we analyze. In sense, we create a conceptual diagram of a solution, a conceptual diagram without any inclusion of technology. So we don't mention, please do develop this solution in Java or a Windows Server or a .NET. We normally just mention this has to be developed. Depending upon the thought process, the project manager, the designer, and the architects of the team, they are take the decision of which technology to be implemented. That's why specify the model on the requirements and the design. Here, the design means conceptual design only, or logical design, and we'll try to understand how do we draw these conceptual and logical designs. Okay, this is what we normally refer as a high level diagram. Then validate and verify information. So what do you mean by validate and verify information? Here we build a list of requirement which are, after analysis, we normally included in a final list of requirement which is getting validated and verified by the client, and even sanctioned by the client. Sanctioned in the sense approved by the client. And then we identify the solution options that meet the business needs. So there could be some solution options like choose biometric, choose iris scanner. We normally go ahead with the biometric, which is economical, which will reduce the solution cost for the client as well. So this way, the biometrics are effective measure of notifying the attendance. But iris scanner is still more effective, but it's used in certain few conditions as per the need, as per the actual requirement on the ground, right? And that's why we need to understand to identify the correct solution fitment, the options, and that meets the business need. So if the economical solution meet the business need, we don't normally go to the costlier options. Okay, the estimate the potential value that could be realized for each of the solution option. At the end of the day, we need to get the attendance notified, as simple as that, right? So for that, I'll make sure the solution will have almost all the economical part rather than the costlier path to make sure the cost of the solution stays as low as possible without compromising quality. And that's how we're going to learn how to build this decision analysis, how to take these decision analysis artifacts and archive them on our server as well. This knowledge area covers incremental and iterative activities ranging from an initial concept and the explanation of the need through the transformation of those needs into a particular recommended solution. So this knowledge area, fifth knowledge area, have six different processes as well to understand, to make sure we do the requirement analysis and a design definition in completion. So design definition include the conceptual or a logical diagram to be constructed as per the given policy and procedure of your organizations you are working with. So this way, we will try to understand this knowledge area in our next session. Does anybody have any questions for me at this moment?
Oh, no, sir.
Right. Now let's spend a few minutes in understanding Manjunatha sir. Manjunatha sir, could you please speak up?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what all, roles have you played in IT, information technology area, sir?
See, I started with BPO, back office processing.
Oh, wow. So you know about voice process and everything. That's really great, sir.
To ITIL, the service management, like problem manager, change, such.
Wow. Wow. So great. So you have ample of experience in understanding these policies and processes. That's really great to know. Now, we don't normally stress on ITL in North America or Canada. ITL is mostly, used by European countries. But yes, again, there are some exception in North America and Canada as well. They use ITL. But we are mostly, concentrate on Agile Scrum as the most used project management methodology. We might dwell on waterfall as well. But again, this is just a learning session. We might include ITL as well if you felt a need for it. ITL is another way of another way of mentioning how the project can be executed in terms of different methodology, different templatization, different standardization. Okay, so don't worry on that part. It's really great to know you, sir. What I'll do, what we normally do at Guru School, we have a shared Google Sheet at a Google Drive where I normally share these recording links there permanently, and otherwise I normally share the recording links within our WhatsApp group as well as a live YouTube video, and that you can basically view at any time. But these links might get lost in a WhatsApp communication, so you can refer to that Google Drive. So I need an email ID from you, or Gmail ID, whatever you use, so that I can add you as an viewer to this Google Sheet. And in our next session, we'll try to analyze this Google Sheet because it has around 15 odd Google Sheets for your help. So it includes something like interview questions, something like previous recordings as well, so that you can start your study. If you want to study aggressively, if you want to study well in time, you might start going through the older recording as well, which will help you to prepare better, prepare earlier than the others, right? And this helps you to start basically working on your profile, getting your profile in line, and taking part in a resume preparatory session where you get your profile built proactively and start applying for the job. These training sessions might take around 2 months, 2.5 months to max 3 months. Please don't wait till the last day for building your profile, getting your resume in order, and start applying. Because wherever you apply, you normally have a month or a 15 days time to join. So we can still cover up all the remaining sessions within that time. Don't worry on that part. That's my responsibility. But you should be able to start applying proactively. The last and the first quarter in North America are supposed to be kind of a really good job opportunity come your way. So please don't wait for the longer time. Start building your profile. Start joining the Tuesdays and Thursdays resume preparatory session. and start shaping up your profile.
Like, where
Go
can
ahead.
I find those Google Drives, sir?
Come again, sir. I couldn't hear you. Hello.
The Google Drive.
Yeah, just you mention your email address in a WhatsApp group, Gmail address, and I'll share that sheet or the drive with you. I believe Sham sir and Sai sir already in that group. Swati ma'am, could you please share your Gmail ID as well so that I can share with you as well?
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Sure, no problem. Okay. So please share your Gmail ID on a WhatsApp group, and I'll add you in couple of hours, and you can get an email from Google Drive saying, ki, okay, Ravindra Pande or Google Guru School have shared these Excel sheet with you. You can view that Excel sheet whenever you need, right? So you might refer to the older videos, other helping YouTube video or videos which are there to help you out to grab the job as early as possible. Start working proactively to basically get a job offer. Okay. So let me, stop today's session. Let's meet a day after tomorrow. That is 10th of September, and we'll try to understand how these fifth and sixth knowledge area is going to help us to analyze effectively for a given solution. Okay. So thank you. Thanks a lot for your time. Let's meet day after tomorrow at 9:30 p.m. EST. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night. Bye
Good
bye.
night.
Take